long. So. Okay, so I will just introduce you to Nicole Murphy, and she is a Rossiter practitioner, yoga coach, and Yamana practitioner who owns her own wellness studio in Loveland, Colorado. And she's going to talk to us about a stretching technique called Rossiter today.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
And then can you tell me, Louise, how long should I talk all together?
Just however long. I mean, we usually keep the meetings to about an hour long, all total. So, I mean, some people talk the whole entire time and other people talk and give demonstrations, and then we have questions. So it's kind of up to how you feel what you want to explain and what you want to do.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so like Louise said, I am Nicole, and I've been a yoga teacher for maybe 10 years, maybe a little longer, 12 years, and a Rossiter coach for about 8 years. And really what started me on this whole journey is to I had some goals. I've had a lot of jobs in my life, and my goals for my next job were to find a job that would make me healthier and my family healthier, and find a job that I could do into old age, because I've actually switched careers quite a few times. And I think switching careers is tough. Learning new things is fun, and I'm a lifelong learner, but switching careers is not really fun sometimes. And so as I've been in this healthful type of vein, I continue to learn all the time. So the newest technique that I've taken on is Yamana, and I'll tell you a little bit about Yamana. I'll tell you a little bit about Rossiter, and I'll tell you a little bit about my where I come from with yoga. So yoga for a lot of people is a lot of different things, and their benefits from yoga are tremendous and varied. I mean, you can get benefits like sleeping better. You can get benefits like better flexibility. That's one that people think of pretty quickly. But and even weight loss and even more strength. But some of those benefits, well, none of those benefits, in my opinion, come singly. They all come together kind of in unison with all the other benefits. So most likely when you start practicing yoga, you're going to get pain relief, and you're going to be sleeping better, and you're going to probably lose weight if that's an issue for you, and you're going to have less stress, and you're going to get stronger. So that's where I come from with my yoga practice, is that I want everyone to have this really well-rounded experience and this really well-rounded group of benefits. The Rossiter came in later, after I've been a yoga teacher for about let me just say one more thing about yoga teaching. I do say that I'm a yoga teacher instead of a yoga instructor, because deep down, I'm a teacher at heart, and I want to teach you how to know yourself better and how to problem solve whatever your issues are. And I don't want to just instruct you on how to make a pose look a certain way on your body. I want to teach you how to take that subject of yoga and make it something that you can use in your own time at home, or even in the office, or driving around, wherever you need it. And then flash forward maybe 5 years to Rossiter, and I had a hurt shoulder, and I was kind of holding my arm like this all the time. My shoulder never hurt if I was moving. It only hurt when I was resting. So like in the evening when I was watching TV, or at night laying in bed, my arm, when it would hang, it would start to hurt. And so I learned about Rossiter from a mentor of mine. Rossiter is aimed at the fascia specifically. As a yoga teacher, and even just as a human walking around, we all know someone who is hurting somewhere, and we maybe don't know how to help them necessarily, but we have a friend who has a hip that hurts, or we have a spouse and their neck always troubles them, or, maybe we ourselves have a sore knee or something like that. So in my yoga community, I knew of clients of mine that had pain, and I knew yoga could help them, but yoga is innately slow when it comes to balancing these body situations, because when you're trying to balance a body imbalance, you're fighting against not just the injury, but usually habits. Habits keep those injuries stuck in us. And so yoga changes those habits, but it's very slow to change a habit. You have to think about it often. You have to, be very mindful, and it's just not a very mindful type of world. So as I learned more about this Rossiter, I thought, well, this is something that I think I could help people faster. And that's exactly what Rossiter, one of the things that distinguishes Rossiter from other modalities, is a very fast modality. And as Louise pointed out at the beginning, it is a stretching modality, but it's aimed at the fascia. And I never know where anybody's coming from with their knowledge. So I just have a couple of diagrams. So I'm going to hold this up to the camera. Yeah, maybe there's not a glare. So this is one line of connected tissue, otherwise known as fascia. And most people have seen muscle diagrams. So I'm just going to contrast that real quick. Most people have seen muscle diagrams. This is a muscle diagram. You know that there's some calf muscles down here. There's some glute muscles, maybe some hamstrings. Maybe you know the name. There's lats and shoulder muscles, and they go up to the head. But if you look at, again, this fascia diagram, you can also kind of see where the calf muscle would be, right? And you can see kind of where some hamstrings would be. And there's some back muscles. This line of fascia is called the superficial back line, sorry. And this person is standing with their toes pointed down. So this fascial line is connected from the bottom of the toes all the way up to the head. And if you look on this little diagram, it goes all the way around the head and attaches just above the eyebrows. I know that's a little blurry. I'm sorry for that. But this connected tissue is connected. And that's why it's kind of nicknamed connected tissue. So the way I think about fascia, or the example I use, is like in the cartoons. Remember the dog that steals the sausage links, and he's running down the road and the sausage are bouncing along behind him. So all of those sausage links are connected. And that would be an example of kind of what fascia is like in your body. It's connected all the way. And each little hot dog would be a muscle, for instance, or an organ or a bone. So all of these fascial lines, and there's more lines. There's another 4 more lines here. There's a big line here. So these lines of fascia kind of stack on top of each other, and they're deep in the body, and then they're superficial, meaning close to the skin. And fascia is different from muscle. Well, let me back up a little bit more. Fascia, the way I think of it is it encapsulates the muscle, but you also have all of your organs are encapsulated in fascia, and even your bones are encapsulated in fascia. Remember how I said that there are layers upon layers of fascia. And fascia, unlike muscle, does not get very good circulation. So muscles change very quickly, and fascia does not change very quickly because it doesn't get very good circulation, and it's supposed to be tight. A couple of things that fascia does in your body is, number one, it holds things together. So like it'll hold the muscle in place. And then number two, it's mucousy. So if you eat chicken, for instance, the slimy layer on a chicken breast that you can just pull off, that's fascia. And if you can think about a time that you've had steak, The part that you would cut off the steak, it's not fat. It's that really thick, chewy thing that you would never chew through. That also is fascia. So it's thickened fascia or thinner fascia. So fascia is supposed to be wet. It's supposed to be mucousy, and it's supposed to help you glide. So all of those things inside of your body, imagine if they were just rubbing against each other all the time. So this fascia is supposed to be wet and glidey, so that these muscles and bones and organs don't get rub burn inside of your body. So that's a little description of fascia. As I mentioned, that there are lots of connected lines. When a person has fascial pain is sometimes random, and sometimes it's not easily explained. For instance, if a person goes to reach for something over on the side and they feel a strange pain somewhere in their shoulder blade, that's not necessarily muscular. It could be fascial. Or if you're picking something up and you would think that your arms would feel a strain, but then there's like a pain maybe down in your hip, that also could be fascia. So it's not, the pain is not, or you've heard of trigger point massage probably, you know, where they push on a spot and it relieves pain somewhere else. Like maybe you have pain in your head and they're working way down on your neck. That could be part of fascia. That could also be muscle, you know, so I don't want to confuse the issue. But back to this example I gave you at the beginning. Have you ever heard that if you have a headache, you should rub your feet? That's partly, no. Yes, and some no. That's partly, if you have a headache, you should rub your feet. Maybe your fascia is sore or tight down in your feet. And that does relieve pain all the way up to the head. Excuse me, 1 second. I'm just getting over a cold. So the difference between Rossiter and just regular massage is, again, in Rossiter, we are stretching the fascia and we're working on a whole line. So back to this example, if we determined this was the line of fascia that was tight on you, we would try to work that whole line in one appointment. And that would help to relieve the tension in the whole line. And so some clients get confused. They'll say, you know, my pain is in my shoulder, but you're working on my hip. It doesn't make any sense to me. Well, it makes sense when you're trying to stretch the fascia and not necessarily getting distracted by what the muscles are doing. Okay, so that's a little bit about Rossiter, and that's mostly what I'm going to talk to you about today. There are ways that you can work on your fascia at home. So I don't want to make you believe that Rossiter is the be all end all when it comes to fascia. There are massage therapists who specialize in fascia also. The other thing that I do is called Yamana body rolling, and we roll on different size balls. But the thing about them is that they're all squishy. All of these are very squishy balls, so they're not hard. And when you, if you could imagine, when you squish this ball into your body, it's not just applying pressure right there. It's going there and spreading out because it's squishy. And so it's stretching you in every direction. And that in itself is a type of fascial stretch. I also have people use foam rollers. I teach all kinds of foam rolling massage for people. A lot of people think that foam rolling is just for the IT band or it's just for your spine. You can use your foam roller all over your whole body. So that's another way that you can be, and there's hard rollers and soft rollers. I'm sure you guys have seen them, but I have them here just to show you 2 foam rollers. These are both long, and I always use long because You can do more things with a long roller. You can't make a short roller longer, but you can always use a little part of a long roller if you only need a little bit. So if you had to only get one, I would always get a long one. All right, so that is kind of what I wanted to tell you about how the yoga and the Rossiter and the body rolling, whether it's with the foam roller or the Yamana balls, that's what I wanted to tell you about all of those tools that I use to help people with their healing. Obviously, drinking water is very important for your fascia. As I said, it's supposed to be mucousy, slimy. And if you're not drinking enough water, what I notice in people when they're not drinking enough water, or if there's an injury, the fascia actually dries out. It feels like old. I heard we were talking about older cats earlier. We've all held like an older animal and just their tissues feel so dry. And they've done a lot of research that says aging is really just drying out. So when you do these different types of fascial massages, you are hydrating your fascia and also helping to get rid of toxins, because you can't get rid of toxins if you're dry. Okay, are there any questions so far?
So this is very different from yoga, right? Or would you say this is very similar to yoga?
It's very different from yoga in that with Rossiter, you have to do it. It's a 2-person project. It's a team project. So it's you and a coach. And I'm going to bring a little model in a little while, my daughter, to show you kind of what it's like. Rossiter is a pin and stretch technique. So we pin the tissue to the bone in most cases. And that's what I do. That's what the coach does. And then the person who's being stretched moves in little ways. Like for instance, if I was working right here, I would just have you move your arm like this. And that would bring that restricted space, that would pull the tissue through that restricted space. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Good. Okay.
I have a friend, this is Kathy. I have a friend who was in an accident. She has neck and I think shoulder problems. Now, she lifts weights. I personally don't think that's a good thing for her to do for her shoulders. I think she's tightening those muscles even more and aggravating the situation. But I'm not, an exercise person, in weights at least. But if she had someone who knew how to do the fascia, once you loosen up the fascia, would that help to loosen up any tight muscles that are aggravating her condition already?
Yes, that's a great question. And that's actually exactly what would happen, Kathy. For a lot of people, for instance, if you've ever known somebody who says, I've been tight my whole life, those people tend to have tight fascia and the muscle cannot be stretched because it's held too tightly by the fascia. So if you could imagine a baby who is maybe 9 months old and they're wearing like 6-month-old pajamas and they're trying to crawl, they would not be able to move very far because the pajamas are holding them too tightly. And that's kind of the way fascia is too. Your arm should move this far or farther even. And if it just won't, then something is tight. And I mean, and of course, barring any tears or bone misalignments, of course, those are different situations. And then going back to your person who has an injury, a lot of times, if you could, if I took my fist and I hit you right here on the arm really hard, you would be able to say, ow, my arm hurts right there. But if you were in an injury, I mean, in an accident, maybe per se, and I'm going to pull my sleeve down really far to show you the pajama idea again. If I was in an accident and I hurt my shoulder and the fascia was tight, notice how it's pulling on my wrist. people have wrist pain. They don't know that the shoulder is the problem. You know, so back to your friend who has a neck pain or a shoulder pain. I don't know what her accident was, but yes, if that's the thing about fascia is you, back to this line again, when you know those lines are there, you can start to follow them. You know, if somebody's tight right here, chances are they're tight right here, and they're going to be tight right here. And you just follow that whole line. It's really interesting when you know what you're doing, that you can trace these lines of tension in the body. And if you just, and another example, when you don't really know what you're doing, here's an example. I have arthritis in my thumb, and I know what I'm doing, but I have arthritis in my thumb, and sometimes it feels good to worry it. And I know that that thumb tension goes right up here to this part of my arm right here. And so sometimes in between clients, I'll rub that too. But if you don't go further up, then you give these toxins that you've released by worrying it and rubbing it, they get stuck. And then what happens is, and this has happened to me even just as recent as 2 weeks ago, I did this to myself. I was rubbing here so much that this pain got significantly worse because I liberated these toxins here. They had nowhere to go because it was still tight, and this swelled up. And so really these lines of fascia, they're kind of like streams that run through your body. I mean, I don't want you to think that they are liquid. They're not, but they're channels for things to flow. And if you don't release that whole line, then things have a tendency to get stuck. And then sometimes the pain is exasperated. So it is good for your friend to find somebody who can release that whole line and not just, you know, I mean, and how many times have you had it to you, you know, your shoulders hurt or your neck hurts, and you talk somebody into rubbing your shoulders for you, and the pain is just back the very next day. So that's why it's nice to go through and flush everything out, Okay. If there's not any other questions, and you can think of any more questions, I'm going to try to go get my model rounded up so that I can show you what this looks like, and it'll make a little more sense. Rossiter makes a lot more sense when you can see it in action.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Interesting. I'll have to mention this to my friend because she wakes up in pain every morning. She also has a trigger finger. And she was also limping. And she Googled it or went to a foot doctor, and he recommended a certain shoe. It looks like a regular, you know, athletic shoe, a sneaker, which helped enormously. Now, I don't know if she's still in pain, but.
So the other interesting thing about Rossiter is that, you know, massage therapists use their hands, and Rossiter actually is based on Rolfing. If any of you have heard of Rolfing, it's another kind of almost massage technique. They're also honing in on the fascia, but they use their hands. With Rossiter, we use our feet because the foot is big and it's warm. And fascia likes to be warm. And so we can, and then the other thing is we can hold that very consistent pressure as you do the movements. Now I want to show you, I'm going to be working on this particular line that I've shown you already a couple of times. Here it is again. This is the superficial back line. Okay. And then there's another one that I want to show you. And when you come in for an appointment of this type of work, we're always trying to think about what line of fascia are we working on. This is another one. Can you see the back, the hamstring up into the glute, all the way up into the back? By the way, this is your lat muscle. And I want to tell you something interesting about it. It attaches to your arm. Isn't that crazy? By this little tiny attachment. So, when you take your arms up, if you have low back pain, Probably it has something to do with that big muscle there. Okay, so we're working on these two different lines of fascia. And like I told you, they sometimes stack on top of each other, which is the case with these two lines I showed you. And so we can be working on more than one at a time, which is very awesome too. Okay, Shayla, come over here and meet everybody. This is Shayla. She's
Hi, Sheila.
she's agreed to be a model. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila.
So put your calf up in that. So let's say she came to me with knee pain or back pain. This would help with both. Can you see? You can see her.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's two chairs here because that way I can be on the same height as her leg. And I'm with my foot. Remember, I told you this all happens with my foot. I'm stepping on her calf. And even though I'm telling you we're working on the fascia, we're focused on the fascia, we're also stretching muscles at the very same time. So you're getting 2 for 1, which is awesome. So remember I said it's a pin and stretch technique. So I'm pinning the muscle to the bone and she's going to step her left foot further out. Go ahead and step. Yep. And then you're going to do little lunges to the left. So lunge, yes. And then back up. Now, keep going up and down. Now, what she's doing is I'm pinning the muscle to the bone. And as she moves, she's pulling that on that muscle. She's pulling on that fascia and she's stretching it. Now I'm going to have her add to it and she's going to do foot circles with her foot. So she's pulling the fascia towards the toes. Keep doing your squats. And she's pulling the fascia towards her hip. So she's pulling it in both directions, even as I'm pinning it to the bone. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. And then just relax. Give me just a second. So a whole appointment only takes 30 minutes. And in that 30-minute appointment, she keeps her clothes on. I keep my clothes on. Everybody has a fun time. Between every single technique, like I told you a little while back, people might say, my shoulder hurts, but you're working on my hip. That's weird. They might say, my knee hurts, but you're not rubbing my knee. You're stepping on my calf. That's weird. But in between every single technique, I have people walk because, again, remember what I said at the very beginning, I'm a teacher and I want you to know what exactly is like a little scientific experiment, every single technique. What has happened now? What's changed? Where are you feeling it? Because sometimes people might walk and then they might say something weird, like, I feel the weirdest sensation in my ear, and then they start to get a clear picture of how that connected line of tissue is connected all the way up and all the way down. I'm going to show you one more technique. There's lots of techniques. There's basically Rossiter techniques for every part of the body. I don't step on people's faces though. But if it's a tummy issue, we can work on that. This one, people love it so much. Will you move that chair way over there and then lay on your tummy with your head on that side? So for a lot of people, just lay head on that side. A lot of people go to get massage and they tell me, oh, I wish the massage therapist would get in there better. So like if you're used to getting a massage and you just never feel like you get enough, Rossiter might be a better option for you. So what I'm putting here are some boxes. These are special Rossiter boxes so that, again, I use my feet for everything. I want to try to keep this height very similar. So this is a technique that people totally love. And it's connected to that same line of connective tissue I showed you that goes all the way up the back. I'm going to push here and Shayla, tell me when you have enough weight. Okay. And now bend your left knee, flex your foot. So when I have her flex her foot, again, she's pulling the fascia all the way here. And now circle your leg. So I'm pinning the tissue on her butt to the bone. And she's doing these little rotations with her knee, which is making those muscles and that fascia move underneath my foot. And now go the other way too. People love this when they have headaches. This is a great spot to work when people have headaches, as well as the calf, by the way, and the foot. I told you about that old wives' tale at the beginning. When you have a headache, rub your feet. This whole back line of fascia is very helpful to headaches. Okay, stop there. So as a Rossiter coach, okay, tell me when. Okay, circle. As a Rossiter coach, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can feel tension through my feet. So my feet are like little gold detectors of tension. All right, and go the other way. Good. All right, and then relax. And then if this was a full appointment, I would also work my way down her leg. Pinning the tissue once again to the bone. Tell me when. Okay, bend your knee. And then zigzag your way down to the floor. Each spot has a certain movement associated that gets the most stretch out of the tissue. Okay, pause there. Here's a new spot. Tell me when you have enough weight. Okay, zigzag your way up. So you can see what I was meaning about it being a two-person team effort. Rossiter is something that you have to participate in. Unlike some types of massage, you get to just lay there and relax. With Rossiter, the person who's in pain has to do the work. But I like that better personally because it makes you in control. You get to do as big a movements as you need to. You get to move as little as you need to, depending on your pain. Okay, thank you, dear. You can go. Go walk that off, though.
Thank you, Shayla.
Thank you.
So that's kind of what Rossiter looks like.
So in this, you sort of clamp one part of the Rossiter, right? So because you don't, so that you have the entire line, but somewhere in the middle at one point, you just clamped it.
Yes,
And the rest
exactly.
you move, right?
Exactly. And that's why it's pretty safe. Like, for instance, a person who has a torn hamstring can still do this type of stretching, and it won't tear the hamstring more because we're clamping it down and we're making the stretch happen exactly where my foot is. And, you know, like in the case of the hamstring tear, for instance, the hamstring is almost certainly torn at the top, but the rest of the muscle is tight. And if we can relieve that tight muscle, it won't pull on those tears as much. It'll relieve some of that. And again, like I mentioned, fascia is supposed to be wet. And if it's dry and if it's not moving, then the toxins just continue to collect. And so as we are in the example of a hamstring tear, for instance, again, it facilitates healing faster because we're getting the circulation in, we're getting the muscle moving in a safe way where it's not being forced to put more aggravation on that tear. So Rossiter is relatively safe. Even in the case of like a rotator cuff tear, for instance, it would not tear it worse. However, it wouldn't make it feel better either, you know? So, oh, and then that's another thing I forgot to mention. Rossiter itself can be a diagnostic tool because if there's a tear, for instance, like a rotator cuff tear in the shoulder again, the Rossiter will not help that to feel better. And if it does not feel better, then you know Rossiter is not a good option for that. And then it would be like, go to the doctor, get your MRI, get your, you know, your imaging done. But if you thought, oh, maybe I have a rotator cuff tear, but you came in for Rossiter and it made your shoulder feel better, you do not have a tear. You just have tight muscles or tendon, or not tendon, fascia. And in most cases, if you feel better the first time, then Rossiter is going to help you feel better time after time after time. So it can be a nice diagnostic tool too.
Nicole, are your intestines wrapped in fascia? Can Rossiter help anyone with like intestinal problems? Do you know, like irritable bowel syndrome, constipation, or diarrhea, something like that?
I'm not too sure about diarrhea, or even IBS, but what I can tell you is that the viscera inside of your from your pelvic floor up to your diaphragm,
Okay.
and all the way around, it
Mhm.
absolutely has fascia. It's this line here. This is your deep front line, and notice that it goes to the groins, and then it passes over the front of the pelvis and goes inside and holds all of your organs. And then the thing that I love to tell people about this one is it continues up, and look where it connects on your face.
The eyes.
Behind the
Well,
jaws.
it's behind the
Oh.
jaw and the temple. Right
Huh.
here. Right
Right.
here.
Interesting.
So very frequently in my practice, people who have headaches right here have very tight bellies and groins. And so again, it's that same connected line. And I have a story about a man who was in a really bad car accident many years ago. And he came in because of headaches. His headaches were in the back though. And as we started working on his headaches, I worked on him for only 3 months, only 3 months. But after about the 6th or 7th session, he started to say all kinds of other different things like, oh, my knee hurts, and oh, now my belly hurts, and I've been having a lot of gas. And so we started like chasing all this tension. The last thing, and it was like each time he would come, something would release. And then each time he would come, he'd have a new complaint. And so he really was that that changing river type of analogy where the tension was just everywhere at the same time, pulling on all of it. And the very last appointment he came to, he said he had been having a lot of gas and a lot of bloating, and we worked in his belly, and he never came back because he's like, I feel amazing. I think we finally found the last thing, you know, which to me sounds crazy that you can ever find the last thing, but he had got to a place where he felt much better in his life. And so, you know, you're always going to have something, which is why foam rolling and body rolling and Phytologen and all the things, you know, you can just, you need to keep up on yourself, but it's fun to go chasing tension and
That's
see what
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, I had a lot of, Nicole knows this because she's worked with me with Rossiter and doing Yamana work and stuff. I had a lot of abdominal complaints. You were talking about like IBS and diarrhea and that type of stuff. And I was having a lot of that. And I used to think that it was exclusively because of diet, you know, gluten or dairy or something along those lines. And then Nicole helped me to realize that I was holding so much tension in my stomach and my groin area. It's still something that I have to keep working on. But once I started releasing a lot of that tension in my abdomen and my groin area, I started having, you know, everything started settling down. I didn't start having all of those stomach upsets and stuff. So from my personal experience for, you know, that type of, not necessarily, yeah, but I was diagnosed at one time with IBS, but it's very much stress related. And I was holding a lot of my stress, not only in my shoulders and my neck, but in my abdomen and my groin area. I still have tight thighs. She keeps telling me keep rolling on my thighs. But yeah, when you release that stress or whatever, then you can kind of peel back the layers and find out if you're still having issues with your gut, then you can really narrow in on what it is once you release all of that stress in your abdomen area.
So can
Thank
this
you.
help in hernia as well?
So when there's a hernia, and as my understanding with a hernia, there's a weakness in the tissue, and it's almost like like the wall has been thinned and it allows for something to spill out type of thing. So I do not know necessarily that Rossiter would help build up the strength of that wall. And for instance, if there is a tear in the fascia, is a very interesting thing. I have a client who has a tear. He had an old motorcycle accident when he was much younger, and his thigh hit the handlebar when he went over, and he has a rip in his fascia. He has a hole, and when he flexes his muscle protrudes out. It's a very strange phenomenon. So it definitely, again, Rossiter does not help with any kind of rip. The rip has to be either fixed or fixed. I don't think it can be fixed with Rossiter because it's a stretching technique. So we're stretching something. Okay, so with that being said, I have lots of clients who, or not lots, but I have a few clients that have a hernia. And I tell them, if you have your belt, if you're doing exercises, you should just wear that hernia belt to hold it in, because every time you bear down, chances are it's going to go out again because there's a weakness in the wall. Now, that being said, so many people are shrunk down in their waist, and their ribs are pushing down into their pelvis, and the space of their waist is very small. And I mean, very small. And if and this is my posture, right? It's terrible. So this is the space. So if you can practice getting taller, then that is going to get bigger and bigger. And then that hernia or that thing that's pushing out doesn't have to push out because it has space.
Right.
So I feel like Rossiter can help. Like, what if the fascia here is tight and it's pulling you down? And Rossiter can help make that length, but it won't stop the hernia from poking out. It can
Right.
hopefully make it less irritated.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And anybody else? Any questions? Any comments? Well, so one more. So Chinese, the Chinese system, there's meridians, and you have here this line. Are these very similar things, or they're very different?
Meridians. So I've had the pleasure to talk with some acupuncturists about because I do acupuncture myself. I mean, I receive. I don't know what I would call that. I don't give acupuncture, but I receive. And to me, I have one acupuncturist, she puts the needle in and she twists it. And I tell you, I can feel my fascia turning. And I asked her about that. I said, and what is that you're putting the needle into? And she said, oh, it's the fascia. And I'm like, oh, I knew it. I just knew it. And so, the meridians exist in a very specific line, and it seems to be much more whereas with a meridian, it's almost like you could draw it with a pen. The fascia is more like a nylon stocking. You remember when we used to wear nylons,
Right.
that kind of nylon. So the fascia is more like a sleeve. So and then the meridian line, I feel like, is a line drawn on that sleeve. And I don't really know if like, let's say my acupuncturist puts a needle here, for instance, Does it affect that whole sleeve? I don't know that.
Right.
But I do think that one exists within the other. I think the meridian exists within the fascia,
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you.
but I don't know that for sure. That's just my gut feeling. When I go to get acupuncture, that's how I feel.
Yeah, I think somebody else was trying to speak.
I think that was Daryl.
Yes, Daryl was just going to say hello.
Hi, Daryl.
I was busy at a work meeting, so that's why I was late.
I
Sorry.
heard. I hope you're not having to hire your replacement.
That might be happening. You never know.
Oh, I know.
But no, I'm going to look at it as a positive, right? Yeah, so
Good.
life is good.
Yeah, you need backup.
Yep.
We all need backup.
And so, yeah, so Daryl has had Rossiter with Nicole as well.
Yeah, I'm the tightest person on the freaking planet. So.
Daryl is very tight, and I do think you have tight fascia and not just tight muscles.
I
Muscles,
believe it.
tight muscles are interesting. Like back to the baby in the pajama situation. If you had a tight muscle and you stretched your arm out, you would feel that this muscle is tight. But if you had tight fascia and you went to stretch your arm out, you just wouldn't be able to. If if you went to go take your arms over your head and I said, straighten your arms, they just wouldn't straighten. You wouldn't necessarily feel tight. It would just not happen.
Right.
So in that case, that probably is a lot of Daryl's, well, yeah, there's been times because he dislocated his shoulder. And so there might be some fascia damage and stuff within there.
Yeah, except that only covers the shoulder. I'm just messed up all the way around.
Need to get him in for more Rossiter treatments.
I keep saying you guys need to build like one of those medieval racks in the basement so you could stretch Daryl on
Oh,
that.
hey, that was there was this chiropractor out in Windsor, which is another town over here that Rick used to go to. And we went to there for a short time. The only thing that I ever liked about them was they had this rack that you literally sat on and you could stretch your back, but it was, you did it yourself for the distance. That was the one thing I liked about that.
Also, they put weights and tension ropes and stuff, so things would be pulling. So it did look a little medieval, but it did feel good when it was pulling you. So I think about that sometimes. Now, with something like that, that wouldn't have any effect on the fascia, would it? That is just muscles and tendons.
So, and I haven't seen that contraption, but I have heard of it. So tendons and ligaments are both fascia as well.
Oh, okay.
And tendons hold muscles to bone and ligaments hold bones together. And most people should not stretch their ligaments. Like if you roll your ankle, for instance, and you've rolled your ankle 15 times in your life and it's a sprain, right? Then you probably have loose ligaments in your ankle bones or your foot bones, which leads you more prone to hurting your ankle again. And so as you stay, I mean, I don't know what this contraption looks like, but it sounds great. But if you like stretch your arms out and something is pulling your arm that way, you're going to be stretching. If you relax your muscles, you're going to be stretching your ligaments. Now, for somebody like Daryl, who's very tight in the muscles, that probably is a good thing. But if it's somebody like a yoga teacher like me, for instance, I don't have really tight muscles. I think that would be detrimental to me because then I would be stretching more connective tissue. And I keep saying connective tissue with regards to fascia. But what I'm saying now is I feel like I would probably be stretching ligaments. And I don't think stretching ligaments is a good idea for somebody who's already flexible. So if you're tight in the muscle, absolutely go get stretched on a rack. Yes.
Some
I'm
kind of
not-
rack. Got it.
Yeah, I know. And I'm not sure about the fascia. I just am not sure without seeing it and experiencing it and like hearing the screams. I just don't know.
Got it.
Well, that is one thing that I do want to let people know is that Rossiter feels really, really good after you're done with your 30-minute session. While you're doing the 30-minute session, you are really stretching that stuff. You're stretching that out. You're stretching it away from, not necessarily the bone or whatever, but that's, it doesn't want to be stretched. And so it is painful sometimes, but you choose the pain level basically.
Exactly.
Because you're the one who's moving that where she's pressing down, and then you're the one who's doing the motion. So whatever level of pain you can handle is what you will do. So in that way, it's kind of like phytology, where it's like, you want to, you have pain to get no pain afterwards.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Well, the other thing that you mentioned was the word Yamana.
Right. So the Yamana is the balls. And Yamana is the person's name. Rossiter is a person's name too. Mr. Rossiter is still alive and well and practicing Rossiter. And Yamana is a woman. And she developed a massage technique, and I would call it a massage technique, that's called Body Logic. And it's also about pinning and stretching and massaging. But she works very systematically from origin to insertion on muscles. And with the balls, you're really focusing on, I'm wearing a black shirt, it's not ideal. You're really focusing on those muscle attachment points, and you're focusing on stimulating the bone. So again, I said muscles terminate into tendons, which connects the muscle to the bone. And so you're really massaging those tendons. You're really massaging the bony attachment site. And the thing I love about all of these things, the yoga, the Yamana, the Rossiter, is that they really do focus on different systems in the body. And many people probably don't think of their bones as living tissue, but your bones are living and dying and making new bone every day, every second, just like the rest of your cells in your body. And your bone structure is not fixed. It can be changed. And I've seen it in my clients. So when you change the way you use your muscles, when you change the tension in the bone, then the bone is more free to let go, and there's no pain in the bone. And so all of these techniques that I do are slow, mindful, breath-focused work. So even in Rossiter, my job, again, as a teacher, is to slow people down and let them feel and experience what's happening in their body. And like Louise was saying, sometimes it's uncomfortable, like especially if there's an injury. People don't want to go there. They don't even want to be touched there. But when we do, and then they add the movement that they're supposed to be able to do, it's not like I'm asking them to tie themselves in a knot or throw their leg behind their head. It's just the movement they're capable of. So much is released. It's fear and whatever trauma from this life or past lives, or just plain old toxins, just plain old tension. Scar tissue is broken down and rebuilt. It's just to be able to identify in your body, oh, that is bone pain, or oh, this is fascia pain, or oh, now this is my skin ripping, or my muscle is just stretching. It's just such a liberating thing to know this is me. This is all part of me, and I have an effect on me, and I can choose to let this go, or maybe I'm not ready to let this go. I work here in the chest for people, and a lady, she's 80. She came to me because of ankle pain. And after we worked together a few times, her ankle wasn't hurting anymore. And so she said, I just can't take a good deep breath. And so I went ahead and I worked in her chest, and she just started to bawl. She just started to cry. And you know, I said, "Do you want me to stop?" And she said, "No, I don't want you to stop." And then so she just kept crying, and we kept stretching. And then when she sat up, she told me that her husband died 10 years ago. I mean, it wasn't even recent, 10 years ago. And she'd been holding all this sadness in her. And that was making her tight and not be able to breathe well. And she just felt so much better when she knew that right away. You know, she knew exactly what that tension was. I didn't know. I didn't know her husband died 10 years ago. So, you know, when she let it go, she knew what it was, you know, and so it's not always my job to know, but it's my job to give people the tools, whatever they are, to go learn themselves and to be able to accept and evolve in this life to whatever they're capable of, you know, and that's the beautiful thing.
That's a great, great story. I wanted to know your opinion of those inversion
Inversion table.
whatever. Yeah, where it turns you almost upside down. I
Yeah.
mean, if you just wanted to stretch out and feel better, would what are your thoughts?
Okay, so that's something I believe in inversion tables. I believe in any type of modality I've ever heard of. I've thought, you know what, there's a place for that, and that sounds good. Inversion table is another one that I do believe in. I think they're great. But back to like kind of what we were talking about with Daryl's stretching rack, you know, to just hang there and hang is not, and as my, excuse me, from my understanding, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to move. You're not supposed to just hang. And then of course, if you're a person that has high blood pressure or glaucoma or, you know, some other things, you'll have to check with your doctor. But I know high blood pressure and glaucoma are not ideal in that situation. But you can invert it, you know, only a certain amount too. And again, you should move. But then again, for somebody who's very tight muscularly, I think an inversion table would be great. But if you're loose, I think it would be bad. So you have to know.
Nicole, why do you have to move? I hadn't heard that before.
Because, well, for one, you don't want to overstay your welcome. So I am one of those loosely ligamented people. I am just loose, and to just hang, like, remember I said my shoulder, to let it hang is when it hurt, because I have loose ligaments in my shoulder. So the best thing for me to do is actually lift weights. You know, like your friend who's lifting weights, we don't know. Is she that person that needs to lift weights, or is she the person who needs to stretch? We don't know. Is she tight in the muscle, or I don't know her. So it is good to work with some kind of coach that knows. But so when you hang upside down or even right side up, if you just grab a hold of a monkey bars and just take your feet off the ground and hang, the weight of your legs is going to give you traction in your spine, which is good, right? It's good. So you can give space to the discs, you can give a stretch to your nervous system. All of that is good. Your nervous system should be stretchy and resilient, and your discs should have space to be plump. But what if you had, like, for instance, my husband has a tendency to get a pinched nerve in his back. So if he went upside down and hung, and then the pinched nerve was relieved, and then sometimes what happens is people hang and they hang too long. They overstay their welcome. Like, you're supposed to build, there's a way to use these inversion tables. You have to build yourself up. You have to invert a little bit and then a little bit more and a little bit more. You don't just go full upside down. But then when you go to get up, you use your muscles and you pull yourself back up. And then what if he pinched that nerve again in a really bad way, and then he's stuck on an inversion table with his legs tied in the thing with the pinched nerve? So that's why if you stay going, then things don't relax all the way. they relax in a balanced way, and you have a sense of, have I stayed too long? Have I stayed too long? Okay, now I need to get up, you know, and you're more set up for success than if things stretch too far and then they go into spasm.
So Nicole, how do you choose in the beginning a patient comes, which is the right modality for that person? Or is it a trial and error process?
It depends too on people's temperament. So if someone came to me in a lot of pain, I don't think I would ask them to go do a yoga class because they are hurting too much. So I would probably have them work one-on-one is in Rossiter, because we're working so close together that I can keep a really good eye on them and help them. And, you know, and again, I have them, I ask for their feedback continuously. I don't know if you heard when Shayla was here, I said, tell me when you have enough weight. How does that feel? Okay, go walk. And then let me know how it feels. You know, so it's a very hands-on, I'm all up in your business. So Rossiter is like that. I send people home with the Yamana balls to do homework at home because they're so gentle. And again, we can talk about the right homework, you know, depending on what tension we find, we can, and what fascial line is at risk, we can determine some Yamana routines to do at home. So that's kind of how I go about it nowadays. Yoga, people, I also am very in your business in yoga too. There's a lot of talking in my yoga classes. I stop regularly and say, where do you feel this? Where do you feel this? Are you feeling it in your big toe? That's not good. We should change it, you know, and we problem solve, because that's how I'm a teacher again. And then when all of the other students hear, then everybody is getting smarter together, you know, and then we know to look for in our own selves.
Absolutely. Pretty good. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Any questions?
So I think, yeah, we're at our hour point. So I think I'd like to say thank you to Nicole. I thought that
Thank
was
you,
very
Nicole.
awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Nicole.
you, Nicole. That is great.
Very
Question
interesting.
and the good discussion. It was really a pleasure to talk to you all. I can tell this is a very, very wonderful group you guys have.
Yeah, I've enjoyed quite a bit. I mean, I've learned something very, very new that I never knew about, right?
Oh,
Very,
wonderful.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you for
And
having me.
yeah, and we have this recorded and we will put it up